All right, today we're going to do some Challenge Arena PvP and see if my fairly free-to-play account can beat teams that are 50 to 100,000 power level greater than mine. Some of these top guys have fully built A15 units, and they are definitely going to have better stats and runes than my units. The majority of my units are going to be A9. Every single unit actually is A9 with the exception of Bastet that is A15. I was able to A15 her from the free Bastet event early on in the game, but everything else is A9 and rocking a mix of purple and legend runes. So the power level difference will be significant, but you can still be fairly competitive in PvP if you are free to play. My best finish was rank 2 in Challenge Arena last season, and the best way to learn is to just fight a lot. Do a lot of wings, do a lot of your entries, even if you're going to lose. If you have a defense that you struggle with, I recommend you hit that defense until you figure it out, understand why you were losing before, and understand what changed that allowed you to pivot to start winning. That's the best way to improve in PvP. So let's get started here. We're just going to go down the roster and hit every single one and see how many that I can beat. All right. Up first is a Camilla, Sean, Annabelle team. So Camilla, you're going to start to see pop up a lot more with the recent balance patch. Her passive now reduces crit damage taken by the summoner by 30%. So this is similar, you can think of it as the Darien passive in Sky Arena. So anytime you are critting the summoner or Camilla, the damage will be reduced just based on her passive. And so you will start to see her pop up. Sean is a very dangerous unit with an AoE silence and a knockdown. That's another big threat. My typical strategy for fighting these teams with Camilla in there is to actually ignore the summoner and ignore the Camilla. That damage mitigation is usually too large for me to nuke down past, and so I'm going to focus on these two units first. Annabelle has a defense break over here, so I'm going to kill Annabelle first, followed by Sean, and then I'll take a look at which unit between the summoner and Camilla have the least amount of HP and go for them next. And you can see before I started the match, I swapped to Wind Staff. When you have an elemental advantage, you're going to do 20% more damage and have a 10% higher chance of doing a crit. And so being on an elemental advantage is going to be very helpful when you need to snipe down a unit. So I'm waiting for my S2 to come up so I can defense break the Annabelle, followed by S3. I'm going to Bastet shield right away over here because I got nuked down a little bit, but it's okay because the Annabelle is down. I'm switching to Dark Staff to take care of the summoner now that her HP is down. I know I said I was going to take down the Sean first, but you have to learn to pivot. The summoner had already lost a lot of her HP, and so she was an easy kill next versus the Sean that was still near full health. Swapping over to Annabelle to get a heal off, and then back to Juno over here for the strips on the Camilla continuous heal, and Camilla is left really not a threat on her own. I want to keep that continuous heal off, so I'm just going to span Juno's strip over there, and it's as simple as that. So not everything went exactly to plan. I thought it was going to be Annabelle, Sean, and then the Orbia, but I was able to pivot in the moment because the Orbia had already taken a significant amount of damage, and so I pivoted from the Sean as my second target directly to the Orbia. All right, so that's one down. Okay, so the biggest threat here is going to be the Theomars with the high attack speed and endure. I'm going to stay on my Wind Staff because Wind Staff's S1 can hit past the endure and pop it. I think I'll keep the same team composition. I'm going to S2 the Theomars, S1 to pop the endure, and then I will probably go for the Juno, swap to water weapon for the, then go for Bastet, swap to water weapon for the Juno, and then handle the Cleave after that. Now with Theomars, it's important that you are ready to handle it once you pop the Endure, because once you pop the Endure, Theomars will gain a max attack speed and he'll start hitting really quickly. And so what I want to do here is to make sure that my S2 immediately pops the Endure so I can... So the Light Staff got the invincibility off before I could S2 the Theomars. My strategy is still going to be the same. I'm going to S3 instead, pop the Endure over there. S1 will get past it. Then I'm going to flip over to the Bastet over here since I have the elemental advantage. Soul Link my Juno so I can start to strip some of these invincibilities from the Cleave Light Staff. Strip the invincibility. I got provoked over here. So I'm going to pivot, attack the Cleave a little bit. Cleanse myself for a heal. Dodge the ulti. Switch to Annabelle for a heal. And then I'm going back on Juno for her strip. My S2 is almost up. I'm going to strip that shield. I'm going to S2 for defense break, flip to Annabelle, and then ulti. The reason I wanted to S2 first is to defense break before I ultied, but the shield went on. I'm going back to Juno to strip the shields. Missed the cleanse on Juno in time, so I lost Juno. Going to Water Staff. Need to take out the Juno next. I think I'm still okay here. This went a little bit more rough than I expected. That's okay. Now it's just a cleave. There's really no threat left. The timer is at 1 minute 30 seconds, which means heals are going to be diminished, and so I'm going to rely on the Bastet shield a little bit more here. I lost my Juno, so I can't strip, so I need to either wait for the Endure to expire or flip to my Wind Staff in 4 seconds so I can pop the Endure. Gonna just keep shielding myself up. Endure has been expired, and so I'm going to ulti, and that should do enough damage to get rid of the cleave. That's 2 down, and as you can see, all 3 of these units are 120 power level or over. So there is quite a big power level differential with their teams versus my teams. A lot of times my units will die first because I am only A9. Most of them are about 80 power level. I'll give you guys a quick peek over here so you can see Bastet, the only A15 unit I own, is at 100, but all 3 other units were in the 90s versus the 120s that I was facing. Okay, next up is another Camilla defense. So you can see nearly 100k power greater than mine. Some meta units going on with Camilla and Galleon and Juno. I think the strategy here is going to be fairly similar to the first Camilla defense, which is to focus on, ignore the Summoner and Camilla because they're going to have that damage mitigation. I'm going to focus on the Galleon first. The Galleon offers a defense break and a attack up, and so that will increase significantly the damage that the enemy is dealing and the damage that I receive. So I need to take down that threat first. I'm going to spam the Bastet shield at first. That's why I have her Soul Link, because that will give my A9 units a little bit more survivability and also give me an attack buff so that I can chain skill the Galleon and hopefully kill it in one combo. So I'm just going to use auto attacks or run it around from the cleave and try to avoid the silence. Going to pop that Bastet shield, get the buff. Going to target Galleon, S2, S3, and then S1. The Galleon's almost dead. Going to pop the shield again for another sustain. S1 is back up, and wow, that Galleon's very tanky with the continuous heal. I'm going to switch to Juno, do a little bit of strip for the healing that the Galleon has. And then the Galleon is dead. I'm switching to Water Staff now to take care of the Juno. I'm going to flip to Annabelle for her ulti because she will do damage on her ulti. That took care of the Juno. Now I'm going after the Camilla. Going to Soul Link Juno for the strip. Actually, let's go after the cleave. The cleave is the bigger threat at this point. I think I can start hitting past the Endure. Because I have Juno Soul Link, the continuous recovery from the Camilla is not doing too much, and because she's on a tanky build, she won't be doing too much damage to my units. And so I'm going to start focusing down the cleave first, who's doing the most damage and therefore posing the most threat. Swapping the Dark Weapon here for the elemental advantage. Continuous recovery is back on. Going back to Annabelle for the ulti. And that should take... Oh, invincibility popped. Back to Juno for the strip. Strip the Endure. And then that takes care of the cleave. Now it's just me and the Camilla. The trick here is to just keep stripping that continuous recovery to take her down quickly. She is fairly tanky, so this should last a few seconds here. But as long as I have all of my units up by this point in the fight, there is really no way to lose. There you have it. So this team was 550k power versus my 560k or 460k power team, I believe. So about 100,000 power level differential between the teams using meta units. Cleaves are typically fairly scary. Okay. This is another unit I haven't really faced before, Shazam. So, skill acceleration, heal based on max HP, And then damage based on max HP, attack down and attack up, and bleed. Wow, okay, that's a really nice unit. I haven't fought that before, but I think I'm going to try and kill the Annabelle first. I'm going to maintain the same team comp here. I'm going to go for Annabelle first and then the Shazam. My reasoning for that is the Shazam scales his heal and damage based on max HP. So my expectation is that he will be very tanky. He does have attack down and bleed, so I don't know if people are stacking accuracy or fully HP stats. I do know Annabelle sometimes people will stack a little bit of evasion and a little bit of accuracy, and so maybe I can nuke down the Annabelle first. I also don't want to go on Dark Staff to try and snipe the Shazam, because in case this Cleave on Light Staff does a lot of damage, he will have an elemental advantage against me on a Dark Staff. So strategy here will likely be Annabelle first and then maybe Juno or Shazam after that. So I'm always waiting for my S2 to be up. If you're an Orbia player, that S2 is going to... Oop, I got provoked. Provoke got cleansed. I'm going to S3 the Annabelle, S1, pop a shield, switching to Juno for the cleanse on the Annabelle, strip on the Annabelle. The Annabelle is down. I'm going to flip to Water Staff here and take care of the Juno next. So Juno got the Light Staff invincibility, so I Soul Linked my Juno instead to strip that off. So my Juno's getting hurt, but Annabelle's cooldown is up. I'm probably going to flip to Annabelle again just to top off my Juno. Then I'm going to Bastet Shield to give myself a buff here. I'm going to pivot and try to kill the Shazam first because it seems to be a little bit squishy. Soul Linked my Annabelle, ultied, and that took care of the Shazam and the Juno in one go. And then all that's left is Cleave. I'm going to go Dark Staff for elemental advantage, Juno to strip the Endure, and that should do it. Once again, every unit over 100k. So quite a bit of power level differential, but if you can strategize appropriately, really go into the fight with a game plan, be aware of the health your units are at. Having lower power level in A9 units is not necessarily a complete barrier to being competitive in PvP. Okay, so this team, we are fairly similar on power level. It should be a little bit easier for me. The Fire Panda here is what I'm most concerned about because of the provoke. Orbia's on Dark Staff, so she's going to have a lot of sustain with both Bastet and Annabelle here. I think what I'm going to do is try to snipe down the Annabelle first and then go for the Orbia. Now I can get provoked, but I do have a Annabelle passive and S2 for the cleanse. So hopefully the provoke doesn't get me caught before I can nuke down the Orbia. I'm going to try to dodge out of the very, very large Panda AoE. So if I just hug the corners here, S2 on the Annabelle, S3, and then she is gone. Bastet's almost dead here already, so I'm going to flip to Juno. I'm going to let Juno use her cooldown on the strip. Bastet shield. Back to Juno for the strip. Took down the Annabelle. Now I'm going to go for the Orbia because the Panda's not going to do too much damage here, but will provoke us. So going back to Bastet to get another shield up. And then back to Water Staff here to finish off the Fire Panda. Going to Annabelle for her ulti. So a little bit easier because the power level differential was fairly the same. As you can see, my units didn't take as much damage. It wasn't as dicey as some of the other matches. So that's the difference between a higher power level team that I fight versus one that's fairly comparative to my team. But the strategies between teams that are more powerful than yours versus ones that are similar doesn't really change that much. You need to really understand what each of the opponent units do. You need to understand all of your own skills and then go in with a game plan that you can pivot and adjust in the moment if things change or are unexpected. So this defense is fairly scary. 2 LDs. Eliona is one of the best Nat 5s. Cadiz does a ton of damage. Typically, I would go for the Eliona first because Eliona is going to give a lot of mana regeneration and cooldown acceleration to the enemy. but Cadiz does a lot of damage with his recent buff, and so I think I have to go after Cadiz first and nuke him down. I'm going to take a risk here and go Light Staff. When I go Light Staff, I do more damage to Cadiz, but the Cadiz will also do more damage to me. So hopefully I can pop off the Bastet shield and give myself a little bit more sustain in time and not get nuked down by the Cadiz. You know, actually, let's pivot. Let's go Fire Panda. Because I am taking a risk with my Light Staff, I'm going to try and provoke the Cadiz first to give myself a little bit of a free target to hit, especially with the Light Staff's S2 that is very stationary. It's harder to aim, and so having the Cadiz provoked will help me out a little bit here. So provoke got on, S2, and the Cadiz is down. Flipping the Dark Staff here, and I'm going for the Eliona next. I'm going to Soul Link my Juno, strip her buffs and turn it into burn. Didn't land. So the Fire Panda was a good pick because, as you can see, the Cleave has been provoked essentially the entire time, giving me free access to really nuke down his units. The Eliona is dead, the Juno is dead, and now the only threat left is the Cleave. I'm going to keep Juno Soul Link to cleanse this Endure, or excuse me, to strip this Endure, and there you have it. All right, we're going down the list. The enemies will get a lot tougher as we go down the list. So Bix is another very competitive Orbia player, currently rank 5, and also running a very meta team with Camilla in here. So with Bix, I need to try to kill the Orbia first. I know with the other Camilla defenses, I've ignored the Orbia. But the Orbia here is going to be a very large threat, and if I ignore the Orbia, she's going to kill all of my units and myself potentially. So I think I'm going to go Bastet, shield and attack buff on Light Staff, and then try to kill the Orbia before the Orbia can kill me. This strategy is risky, but is really the strategy I have to utilize because of how much stronger he is. You can see this is over a 100,000 power level difference. And if I try to out-sustain, I'll lose that fight. And so my strategy here is to try and snipe and nuke down a single threat to even the playing field a little bit. The watch out here is the Tayor Provoke. Now, the good thing about Tayor's Provoke is that the AoE is not necessarily very large, and so if I can just hug the walls and go behind the Orbia here, I can avoid the Tayor Provoke. I can S1 for my crit damage buff, S2, shield on Bastet, and finish the... Oh, not quite finished. She got a buff. I'm going to strip the shield. Couldn't strip the shield because my Juno was provoked by the Tayor. Healing myself. I lost my Bastet. And that is GG. So strategy didn't work out. My Juno, I was trying to strip the Orbia's shield, but my Juno was provoked by the Tayor. And I couldn't get down the enemy Orbia in time in order for my strategy to work. Like I said, that was a very risky strategy to go into such a powerful team, but I don't see myself beating this team any other way besides sniping down the Orbia first. Sometimes it works, sometimes it doesn't, but that's how you learn and get better, and you can adjust as you go. I think next time I would wait for my Bastet to use her cooldown on the shield, swap her to Soul Link, and then use her shield again, so I have double the attack buff before I use my Light Staff cooldowns on the Orbia, so I'm using more damage. If you recall, I was very close to getting the Orbia dead. She had a little bit, maybe 10% of HP left, and so if I had doubled the attack buff, I probably could have nuked down the Orbia. Okay, moving on. So Galleon, Neptune, Hathor. Hathor is not a unit that we see fairly often. She does a strip and apply sleep with a certain chance, and then also apply sleep and decreases my mana. Okay. I'm not too sure what to think about Hathor, to be honest. I have not fought Hathor's a lot. I kind of want to bring in a Wusa to this. Or I can just bring in a Tessarion that can hopefully help me kill the Orbia before I have to worry about the sleep. And then Tessarion will have elemental advantage against the Hathor as well. So let's try that. Similar strategy to the last fight that I just lost. I'm going to go after the Orbia first and then Hathor. Now, I'm going to do my best to wait for my Tessarion, who's on Soling, to pop a defense break on the Orbia before I use my cooldowns, because that defense break will significantly increase. So the Tessa missed his defense break, and I got slapped with the Juno cleanse. So Tessa got the defense break that time. Hathor is almost dead. And then I'm going to Water Staff now to take care of the Galleon. Going to flip to my Juno, cleanse and heal and everybody off. And then now the Beetle is left. Going to flip over here to Annabelle for extra defense break over here. So there you have it. Sometimes the risky strategy is the only strategy you can take in when you're underpowered, but a lot of times it works if you have enough practice running a sniping strategy. Okay, 2 more left. Dig Batty. I believe Dig Batty is high up on the ranks. He's number 2 over here with a Molly. Mollies are very scary. So I think I'm going to bring Bastet back in here. What I'm going to do is switch to Dark Staff that has heal block because Molly heals a lot of sustain. Bringing Dark Staff is not always smart when there's a Juno on the opposing team because Dark Staff will land 4 different debuffs, which essentially gives Juno, once she cleanses, the ability to heal everybody to max HP. But I want to bring Dark Staff here for the heal block, and because I have a attribute advantage against the Molly, my strategy will be to essentially Bastet shield 2 times, so I have maximum attack buff, 2 attack buffs. Try and group up these 3 units. You notice that all 3 units are support, so they all behave in a similar way. So if I can group up all 3 of them, have 2 attack buffs up, keep shield on to sustain my units from the cleave, I'm hopefully able to nuke them all down. So the cleave is also on light staff, and that's always tricky because the invincibility can get you stuck. So I may need a game in the moment swap to Juno in order to strip any invincibility. So I screwed up there. I was supposed to let Bastet use her shield on her own, but I used the Soling skill and used my mana instead. Swapping to Annabelle, going to ulti, and hopefully this gets 1 unit down. Not quite. Okay, we got 2 units down. Now it's just the Molly left. Going back to Juno so I can start taking away the buffs from the cleave. Stripping the Endure, stripping the invincibility, and there you have it. So I did screw up in the beginning because I had Bastet Soul Linked and I used her shield with my mana right away. What I intended to do was to take her off Soul Link, let her use her cooldown on the shield, bring her back to Soul Link, and then use my mana for the shield so I could double up on the attack buff before I opened up DPS. Okay, Archer. Another similar defense that we've seen. He is on Dark Staff, so he's going to have a little bit more sustain. Galleon's going to give him damage. Camilla's going to give him sustain. So with Archer here, I think I need to nuke down the cleave. And in order to nuke down the cleave, I need my Tessarion, but I also need a little bit more damage on my Light Staff because he is on Dark Staff. The reason why I'm choosing not to ignore the units is I've fought Archer before, and his units are very tanky. And every time that I try to snipe down one unit, usually he will have killed 1 or 2 of my units by then. And so this isn't my first time fighting him, so I obviously have a little bit more awareness of what might happen in this fight. But that's why practicing and fighting defenses that you lose to is so important. It can help you really understand how the opponent's units are built. And over time, you might lose a couple times, but after that, you may start to figure them out and win consistently. So I'm going to Soling Tessarion. I'm going to use his S2 to defense break the Cleave. And then hopefully the defense break lands. And then that should give me enough opening in order to kill the Cleave before he does too much damage. So I didn't land the defense break, but I did get the beneficial effect block on him, and Juno healed. So there's the defense break. You need to still avoid the threats over here, switching over to Annabelle. So I got the Cleave down, popping my heal on the Annabelle. I lost my Juno here. I need to go to Waterstaff to kill the enemy Juno, but I think I should be good because there should be no significant threat remaining now that I have taken care of the Cleave. The Camilla is going to be tanky. Some Junos are built on crit damage, but I don't think this Juno necessarily is. I'm going to defense break the Juno with my Annabelle since I have a little bit of spare mana. Then I'm going to go after the Galleon, who is probably a little bit less tanky than the Camilla. I missed the heal on my Tessarion, so I need to run over here. I'm going to wait for a defense break. Oop. I was waiting for a defense break before I ulti, but I accidentally pressed the button. But the ulti took care of the Camilla and the Galleon. All right, so I think that was the entire roster. We had, out of 10 battles, 1 loss to Bix, and that one was touch and go because it was a risky strategy. We were, as you can see, Archer, Digbatty, Bizzle, Bix, Buster, these are all people that we just fought, all higher ranked than me. They, I think, all have greater than 500k power level teams. I believe they all have A15 units versus my about 440 power team. As I said, Bastet is the only unit I have Awakened 15. Tessarion, Wusa, Fire Panda, Argon wasn't PvP, Juno, Annabelle, Lupinus. Those are my core PvP picks, and they're all A9. They also are all rocking some purple runes, right? So they're not all decked out in the legends. They all have a good mix of purple runes. My account level is only 53. And yet, if you can strategize, practice enough, get your trials in, you can be fairly competitive in Challenge Arena. Like I said, my best finish was rank 2, where I really pushed hard, but I was only able to achieve rank 2 because in the other weeks in the previous season, I hit every single defense on my roster to strategize and really learn the compositions and the units. And so if you can invest the time and capacity to strategize and think about how you're approaching each defense individually, learn from all of your fails, even as a free-to-play player, you can be fairly competitive in PvP. Good luck, everyone.